This past summer, my husband Gus and I returned to Senegal, West Africa. We lived there from 1984 to 1992. We invited a young man named Patrick to travel with us. Let me tell you about Patrick. Patrick Mueller was born in Weno-Seno, Senegal, the day before St. Patrick's Day in 1995. His mother died at his birth. He was cared for by missionaries Bruce and Catherine Mueller and later adopted by them. At the age of 6, Patrick's family left Senegal and moved to Sheridan, Oregon. Bruce and Catherine planned to take Patrick back to meet his biological family, but plans were thwarted when Bruce died of lung cancer. Patrick was 16 at the time. Catherine was left to care for 4 children, 3 biological and a small farm. Gus and I met Bruce and Catherine in Linguère, Senegal. When we moved back to Minnesota in 1992, the Muellers arrived in Senegal. They continued the projects in animal husbandry and expanded the cultural center. Between 1992 and 2013, our families saw each other in Senegal, Oregon, and Minnesota. We knew of Bruce's plan to take his son to visit the country of his birth. Last winter, Gus and I asked Catherine, his mother, if we could take Patrick with us and travel back to Senegal. Catherine was pleased with our offer. In July, after Patrick finished his junior year of high school, he boarded an airplane in Portland and flew to Minneapolis. 2 weeks later, the 3 of us left for Dakar, Senegal. 3 Senegalese who had worked with both us and the Muellers helped us with the logistics of lodging, car rental, and visits with Patrick's family. When we arrived in the town of Linguère, where both of our families once lived, Sully, a first cousin of Patrick's, helped us set up a schedule. Sully had little formal education, but is literate and fluent in French and Pulaar. Most of Patrick's Senegalese family members speak only Pulaar. Patrick speaks English and a little Japanese, and Gus and I can converse in French, but are very limited in Pulaar. So Sully was one of the lifesavers in the language quandary. Many times, the universal language of smiles, gestures, and touch superseded grammar and vocabulary. Sully had only informed 3 people that Hamidou would be coming to Weno-Seno for a visit. Hamidou was the name Patrick's birth father gave him at his naming ceremony 8 days after his birth. Before we left for our first visit to Patrick's birth village, Sully informed us that we would be meeting Patrick's sister Boya and his brother Matt. Their biological father had died several years before. Sully, his wife, and their 4 children, Patrick, Gus, and I, got in the Toyota SUV that we were given to drive and headed to the village of Weno-Seno. There are multiple trails leading to villages. When the ruts and potholes from the rains get too deep, a horse cart or bush taxi forges a new trail. The driver chooses which trail looks the best and is headed in the right direction. Sully was the navigator and Gus the driver. Families live in scattered compounds, so when the villagers hear a diesel engine coming towards their village, some of the children and young men stop what they're doing and walk towards the sound. Sully directed Gus to stop first by the village well and see their motorized pump. The group of young men and boys arrived at the same time to welcome us. Each and every encounter with another human being begins with a handshake and an exchange of peace. Assalamu alaikum, which is Arabic for peace be with you. That is followed by questions like, how was the morning? Did you pass the night well? How is the family? How is your health? How is your household? There is one recurring response to all these questions. In the Pulaar language, the response is Jem Tun, which means peace only. We use the phrase Jem Tun dozens of times each day. While we were looking at the new well pump, Sully and his wife Aminata took Patrick's hand and led him to 2 trees. This is the spot where your parents, Salif and Asi, lived when you were born, Sully said. It didn't take long for word to spread that Hamidou had come from America to greet his family. We repeated the exchange of peace with each additional person who arrived. Then they invited us inside a fenced compound. We sat on a stick bed frame. The villagers filled the spaces on the bed frame. When there was no more room, someone spread mats on the sand for additional seating. Children either stood or sat directly on the sand. Some villagers came to exchange peace and then left. Without saying anything, Patrick, Gus, and I wondered which one was Boya and which one was Matt. Soon a young woman with a year-old child nestled on her back and another boy hanging onto her dress approached Patrick. She shook his hand, squeezed in beside him, put her face in her lap, and wept. This must be Boya, the three of us thought without uttering a word. She wore a colorful polka dot dress, had 2 tribal scars next to each of her dark, large eyes. The scars looked like quotation marks. Black dye circled the dark olive skin around her mouth. Her 2 young sons started sobbing too and clung to their mother's boo-boo. Everyone else was silent. Did Boya remember the day her mother gave birth to a son and then was taken to the nearby hospital and came back in a few hours? Did she watch women wash her mother's body, drape her in white cloth, and put her to rest in the earth? Did she recall when a white woman came to the village and offered to take care of the baby? After several minutes of sobs and silence, an elderly woman took Boya's hand and moved her to another part of the bed. Boya wiped her eyes and spent the remainder of the afternoon glancing at Patrick and tending to her boys. Matt had slipped into the gathering unnoticed and quiet. Perhaps he didn't know what to say to his brother. On the way home, Patrick said to Gus and me, "I didn't know what to say or do." "Neither did we both echoed. The next day, we drove to his other sister, Alarbra's village. She apparently was notified by cell phone that her brother Hamidou from America would be coming to her village. When she heard the diesel engine approaching, she started walking. She wore a blue and turquoise outfit with gold embroidery around the neckline. She carried a young son in her arms. Her smile and eyes bore the same facial features as Boya, Matt, and Patrick. She first greeted Patrick, then Gus, then me. She went back to Patrick, grabbed his hand, and led him to a stick-frame bed inside their compound. Alarbra's husband readied charcoal, water, sugar, tea, glasses, tray, and teapot, and sat on an orange plastic mat atop the sand and prepared tea. The Muslims were in their 3rd week of fasting for the month of Ramadan. However, it seemed that this occasion was justifiable to break the fast before sunset. The following day, we went to another village. We met one of Patrick's great uncles. He could neither see nor hear well. He came out of his straw hut clasping a long walking stick. When he touched Patrick's hand, he knelt to the ground. His wife and Patrick's maternal aunt just mumbled, caressed, and clung to Patrick's long, muscular arms. The women didn't need to use words to show Patrick how much they appreciated that he came back to see them. Patrick, Gus, and I were beginning to make a mental image of Patrick's family tree. For as many questions as the 3 of us asked, Sully never said, "Remember, Betty, I told you that yesterday." In addition to 2 full sisters and 1 full brother, Patrick also has a half-sister and a half-brother. The Senegalese don't distinguish between full, half, great, in-law, or such. To them, you're either a brother, sister, or mother or father. Patrick's half-sister, Fatimata, traveled quite a distance by horse cart to see him in Linguère. His half-brother, Adama, who lives in the outskirts of the capital city of Dakar, came by car rapide to see Patrick at the guest house we used in Dakar. He didn't come one time, but every day until we flew back to Minnesota. 2 brothers of Patrick's father came from surrounding villages to meet and talk to Patrick. They spoke in Pular, Another cousin translated into French, and I spoke their words to Patrick in English. They said, "We are so happy that you came to see us. Your father learned French and other languages spoken in the Casamance when he worked there. He was gifted with languages. If Salif Ba were here today, he would encourage you to study hard, learn other languages, and be kind to everyone. Salif was a noble man." I was blown away by this Muslim family's caring, peaceful, gracious words. I didn't sense any regret or hard feelings concerning the decision 18 years ago to give this baby to a white Christian family. Suli and Aminata planned one last gathering in Patrick's birth village of Bueno Seno. Patrick's sister Alarbra and her family came to Linguère and traveled with us to Bueno Seno. Alarbra rarely has an opportunity to travel the 30 miles to see her sister Boya and her brother Matt. Suli's extended family prepared a festive meal and tea for nearly 75 people. At the end of the day, Patrick said, "I'll never be so popular again." So what does this story have to do with the Lenten theme of walking with Jesus on the way to the cross? When we lived in Senegal, I frequently thought of the story in Genesis 18 that was read moments ago. The setting of Abraham sitting next to his tent in the heat of the day, visitors stopping by unannounced, full attention given to the unannounced guest, preparing and serving a special meal. This is how the Senegalese people treated us. This was the kind of welcome Patrick received, an Abraham welcome, or we could say a Jesus welcome. Lent reminds us of God's welcoming invitation to follow Jesus to the cross where he died for all. You, me, Patrick, his Senegalese black family, those who live in grass huts or mansions, those who speak Pulaar, French, or English. Walking with Jesus on the way to the cross means that God sometimes comes into our lives in unexpected ways. When we are confronted with people who are hurt or at their wits' end or in need of something, it's easy to look the other way and continue with our busyness. Walking with Jesus means stepping out of our comfort zones and taking sides with justice rather than convenience. Sometimes this Holy Spirit nudges us in our Lenten walk, and sometimes the Spirit gives us an unwanted push. Peace be with you in your Lenten walk. Jem Tun, peace only.